Okay, I think we are about to start. So this is a welcoming lecture that we do every start of the semester. This evening, we are very grateful actually to have Mr. Sandeep Chatterjee, who is now working in Deloitte, to give you a welcoming lecture. So the lecture this evening will be about a very important issue, I think, which is dealing with the changing landscape in business and how, as a professionals, we can deal with those changing landscape. Yeah, we know that now with COVID-19 especially, everything is changing.
Right.
Some businesses are getting, very, very tough. Yeah, some businesses are actually getting a lot of opportunities, and we need a lot of changes to do to deal with this. Let me read a little bit about Mr. Sandeep Chatterjee. He's working as a director in Deloitte. You know that Deloitte is a very well-known consulting company. He's responsible for engagement in various consulting services. He has a lot of working experience. Before with Deloitte, he was with KPMG, which is also a consulting company, and then Tata Motors, Lafarge, Infosys, and Oracle Consulting. He's very strong in the area of supply chain management, business process re-engineering, emerging countries enablement, network optimization, ERP implementation, and ERP footprint review across multiple industries and geographies. He holds an MBA from Indian Institute of Management, Kozhikode, and Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering from Bengal Engineering and Science University. He has written several supply chain cases for different institutions in India, including IIM and IIT in Bombay. And he received various awards. And one of them recently was MTC Global Award for Excellence in 2017 as an Outstanding Corporate Award. Sandeep is also the member of Board of Governors in IIM Kozhikode and the CEO and Chairman of International Supply Chain Education Alliance in India. And by chance, I'm also the President of International Supply Chain Education Alliance in Indonesia. I think we all are very excited to have you here, Mr. Chatterjee, and we look forward to listening to your talk. So we have around maybe 1 hour for your talk.
Yeah, sure.
And after that, we will have a Q&A.
Yeah.
And for anyone, students, faculty members, if you have any question, feel free to write your question in the chat, and probably I will pick some of them to also say your question directly at the end of the session. Okay, Mr. Chatterjee, I think time is yours now.
Thank you so much again. You've been very, very kind to invite me, and of course, I love interacting with this young crowd because that's where we get a lot of new ideas. So that's my reason why I never say no to some of these things. So again, I will talk about, though I specialize in supply chain enabled by technology. So because this is a class on technology management, I thought that maybe I will talk a little bit about the tech revolution, because at least I know you guys are doing a master's and PhD in technology management, and you are aware of what is happening around. But this will give you a perspective on what we have been doing over the years. So that helps you in picking up a area of your choice for your research, or even when you're looking at a placement kind of a thing. Now, yeah, so if I look at it, the way I am looking at it, it's again, I don't represent Deloitte here, but some of the information which I will use is based on what we have been doing it. So every year we publish something called technology trends, and that's actually is a very, because when we work with multiple clients, we speak to them, and we get a perspective on what is going to be the likely thing tomorrow. Because as academicians and industrialists, we need to design something for the future. Because if I design something for today and tomorrow something changes, I think I have to throw it away. And that's what COVID has actually taken all of us on guard. So what I'm saying is that I don't need to predict everything, but at least if I have some done my homework over the years, I think that helps. So if I look at it, let me just go back and look at the last 11 years, because this is, if I look at it, this is my key slide, which will talk about what actually where we are. So today's world, if I look at it, there are 6 aspects which become very, very critical. First is your core. So everybody is trying to get into a digital experience, customer experience, what we are. So customer delight is not enough. It's all about the customer experience. So be it, if I am trying to order clothes online, and if I look at it 5 years, 10 years ago, I could not even think of that I can sit here and try to simulate it on my laptop and then go and buy it. I always wanted to go to the store and try it. But thanks to the technology in terms of augmented reality, virtual reality, where I get to simulate it, we have got a lot of customer confidence in that, and people are willing to buy online. Same with electronics, people wanted to feel the product, wanted to touch the product. But today technology has taken it to that extent that even sitting here, it's all about omni-channel, where whether I buy it online or whether I buy it in store, I get the same seamless experience, I get the same prices, because I know customers who will go to the store, feel it, and then order it online. So this transition, this has to be seamless. So that is what we are called as core, where everybody is trying to get into a customer experience. That becomes very, very important. Next, if I look at it, risk. Now, what we have done, now as we have moved, we are talking about cloud. Now, earlier days, nobody really spoke about the cloud because people wanted to have their own in-house systems, own data centers. But as people thought that, as I am a company which specializes in this, but there are people who specialize in technology. They know it better. So let me partner with them. Let them manage my system, and I will pay as per you. So that's where I think cloud became very, very important, critical. Of course, 3 years ago, also people were really thinking, do I need to look at cloud? Is it not risky? But today, as I say, there are banks which have moved their data to cloud. Now, why is this people are moving so much into cloud? The only reason which I think is you have to scale up fast. If you have a traditional data center, and with all these your built-in processes which you are doing it in your in-house software, it actually creates a lot of heavyweight. In fact, if you have to scale up, it becomes a real problem. Today's business processes are more standardized. Of course, every company has a differentiation point, but that's where I think, because cloud has gained a lot of prominence, that throws it to risk. See, I always say it this way, there are always smarter people. You can design a very smart system, but there are always people who are smarter than you. So that's why if I look at it, the risk in terms of cyber, in terms of ethical technology, that becomes very, very important. Now, why I'm talking about ethical technology? Now, if you look at today's AI and ML algorithms, now the way you train the model, you will get the output. So there has been ethical considerations that if I want my AI or ML to behave in a certain way, I will only train it with this kind of data, which is suitable for me. So therefore, there is an ethical consideration, and this is not just a sweet talk, because companies are serious about it. Because today, if you look at it, any brand, it has a bearing on your technology. So everybody says, is this company ethical? Is the technology being used? This is ethical. This ethical technology and trust is going to be a very big thing which is going to come in the next few years. Now, in terms of business of technology, what I'm saying is, yesterday there was a CIO who used to only do technology, but today's CIO sits in the board. CIO also makes business decisions. Similarly, the CFO also has to understand technology. So that's where we have seen these boundaries between technology and business has actually collapsed. So it's always the kinetic leader, which it's more dynamic, because today's CEO, he knows as much technology as I know, because that is what the need of the hours. I don't expect him to code, but at least he should be willing to apply it, because it's the application which matters. Now, cloud, we spoke briefly about it, and the next thing which is coming in, blockchain. Now, as we get into the COVID era, we are talking about remote working, and all this has been possible because today we have technology which can talk to any other technology. Today we have ways and means where we have sensors which can actually sense the data, and then I can do my analysis, and then I can get. So what I say is, it's a physical world where I have my sensors, I collect my data, I give it to my digital twin is nothing but, because a lot of people have made it a fad, but digital twin is nothing but it's a digital replica of your physical world. So you collect your data from your physical world, you write your AI, ML, or all your algorithms in the digital world, you process it, and then feed it back to your physical world. So this loop becomes very, very important. So that all the while, blockchain becomes very, very important, because as more partners, because we are in a business where only a single company cannot work independent, because we are all in a connected world. And in fact, if I give an example, when the COVID started, in fact, for the India pharmaceutical industry, 70% of the raw materials come from China. And once this COVID came in, the borders were closed, and the pharma industry actually suffered, because India did not have the capability to develop those raw materials. So as we get into a connected world, that means it's easy to say me, I need more trust, because a supply chain is as strong as is the trust. Now, it's a human being, of course, we try to trust human beings, but blockchain has come in a big way, because nobody can change the data. So whatever block comes in, that gets appended, and you can actually get a history. And if you want to change any data, it has to be actually a algorithm which has to run together. Of course, there have been, I always say that there are people who have been always smarter than you. So people have always found loopholes. But in terms of visibility and in terms of trust, this is a technology which is promising. Now, only thing which has not picked up so much, because there are no universal standards, in the sense that one bank has its own blockchain. Similarly, another bank will have its own blockchain. And it's very difficult to connect these two blockchains, because the standards are totally different. So unless we have a universal kind of a standard, this is actually going to be a little while away. Next is analytics and cognitive. So we call it as the power of V. It's humans and machines coexisting. See, as a human being, there are 24 hours in a day, and there is only limited things which I can do. What we have done is, we have created these algorithms, the analytics, the cognitive, where the machines can perform the routine job. So if you look at today's analytics, or they are self-fulfilling, in a sense that I define my rules, that if this is within this tolerance, you go ahead and execute this. So I don't need to have some human beings sitting there to make a decision. Human beings are better equipped to make a decision which is not routine, which is, we are moving up the value chain. Now, The typical example which I give, it's like a airplane. So I have a fighter plane, and what the machine learning algorithm will give me is all these gadgets like this is my temperature, this is my pressure, this is my oil level. But it's only the pilot who makes a decision whether to crash land or not. A machine cannot make that decision because machine does not have history, it is not routine. So that is where we will see more this cohabitation of machine and human beings, which is going to come. So we call it as the power of we. And finally, the digital experience or the digital reality, what we're talking about, everybody is trying to go digital because the kind of digitization which we have seen over the years has been slow. But COVID, I think I have not seen so many digitization. In fact, if you look at it, consulting business typically is a high touch business because we love to talk to our clients, we love to have face-to-face meetings. But even in this kind of business, we were able to disrupt it because sitting remotely, we did our business seamlessly, and this has been one of our best years because we saved a lot of money on travel, we saved a lot of money on real estate. It works because we had to train our customers that yes, Zoom works, Teams work, Skypes work. So that's where it was more of a mindset change, and that's where now if you look at a Zoom, the digital experience is something extraordinary. So this is where I think over the 11 years, if you look at it, some of these things have remained. I will delve in a little more detail in that. But essentially, if you look at it, these are the core 6 things in technology management, which will be important. One is my core business operations. Second is definitely risk. Maybe it's a cyber risk, or with COVID, risk management has become even more critical. Then there is this business of technology where the barriers between technology and business have shrunk. Then there is cloud and blockchain, where we are looking at visibility, we are looking at faster ramp up. Then there is the analytics and cognitive, where sitting in a room, I can actually run my company. And it's all just not descriptive, it's all predictive, prescriptive. They are self-fulfilling algorithms which actually make a decision on their own. And at the end, again, digital experience and digital reality is what where everybody is good looking around. Now, in terms of digital experience and digital reality, if I say, it's of course, it's a mixed reality. It's a AR, VR was always there. So we have seen this trends over the last 4-5 years. Similarly, when I look at my analytics and cognitive, so we had, of course, analytics. We had dark analytics where we started unstructured, where we are looking at all our social media. But with digital twins, what we are going is algorithms, which actually are self-fulfilling. They execute self-executing algorithms. Similarly, when I talk about cloud and blockchain, we got into an API kind of thing, but now if you look at it, it's all serverless because everybody wants to scale up. Similarly, in terms of business of technology, we have seen CIOs playing a prominent role, but today's CIOs, again, do make a business decision. And similarly, a CFO has to understand technology. In terms of risk was always there, but only thing is after COVID, this has even become of more paramount importance. And it's a no-brainer, the core business, whatever we do, we are at the end of the day, we're trying to solve a business problem. So moving on, if you look at it, how we are, so if I look at my 2020, we are actually, by the time I speak, the 2021 version is also out, but I just wanted to briefly talk about it. First is our focus on macro technology. See, of course, micro is important, but you have to look at just looking at individual technologies is not enough. It has to, for example, just an IoT will not help you because IoT coupled with cloud, coupled with AR, VR. So that is where I think major shift. All these years, people were looking at only single technology, which will drive them out of everything. But in today's world, what we have seen is it's the macro technology where we look at technology together. It's an orchestration. That's what matters. And to give a typical example, I will say that example of Apple. See, Apple was always a very closed company. They never allowed outsiders to get in. But then when Apple realized that the iOS platform was losing to Android, because they moved into a platform, because platform in a sense that if more people embrace your technology, your ecosystem grows. So that's where Apple also opened up their app development to all third parties. So that is where we see this macro technologies in terms of enablers. Of course, digital experience, analytics, and cloud, they are enablers of macro technology. In terms of foundation, these are fundamentals which you cannot ignore. For example, the business of technology. For example, there are no barriers between a CFO, CMO, or a CIO. Risk was always there, and everybody is trying to get into the modern, because I have to scale up fast, I have to fail fast. I need to, if I have to expand, I need to get the technology fast. And today, if you look at it, we are in a world which is collaborative, because I cannot do everything. I depend on a lot of my partners. So I will collaborate and compete. So that's where these foundations have not changed. Now, in terms of disruptors, cognitive and blockchain are big time disruptors, because analytics and cloud existed, but the disruption which is going to happen is more in terms of the blockchain, because blockchain is still in its very, very nascent state. There is a lot of skepticism around that. But again, it's my personal view that blockchain is going to take a very important role as we talk about visibility and trust. And in terms of horizontal risks, where I say quantum, you must have heard about quantum, because today's supercomputers, the current technology is not enough. So we are trying out with quantum. So back to fundamentals of physics. And exponential, for example, exponential technology, what we define is a technology which is going to be commercial in the next 5 years. So in terms of, let's say, it's a storage device. For example, lithium batteries. They are, of course, Elon Musk has actually fundamentally taken batteries to a different level. But to be commercially viable, we will need another 60 months. But the idea that I can actually store electricity, because electricity typically what happens is I cannot usually store electricity. I generate and I have to consume. But lithium batteries have actually given us an hope where we are able to store this electricity. So this is where I think one of the exponential technologies, intelligence, which is going to be a big thing. Next, again, ethical technology and trust. I was harping upon it because today's customers are very, very critical. Thing is, because of the current generation, they don't want to buy from somebody who is employing child labor or who is unethical, because this is not just fad talk. This is, we are seeing reality, because people don't want to do business with companies which are unethical, because all these data privacy issues, of all these trust issues, this has become very, very critical for all. Next, in terms of human experience, now we have technology which is actually being able to measure even your mental state. So of course there's a debate whether IQ is important or EQ is important, but do understand that I don't say IQ is not important, but today's world, EQ has become even more critical. And today's machines, they are capable of measuring. Of course, there have been not much stride in technology, because this still needs a lot of development. But what we have seen is computing has taken us to the next level, where people are able to judge for example, a lie detector. Of course, I don't want to get into whether it's actually right or not, but looking at the way your nerves behave when you're telling a lie, it can actually detect whether you're telling a lie. So it's an extension of a lie detector, but much more sophisticated, what we are seeing in terms of the human experience. Because today's consumers, it's the experience which is going to be of more importance, critical for us. Next, in terms of the future of IT, I was saying that in terms of budget contracting or capital planning, this is all, it needs a flexible approach, because today you need to do technology investment, because today you don't look at technology as a cost, it's an investment. Because if you don't invest in technology, you will be a laggard. And COVID has demonstrated companies which were better prepared technologically, they were able to run their operations seamlessly. So today's technology, actually, it's an investment, and that's why the barriers between the finance function, because if the CFO doesn't understand the real ROI of a technology, that is where I think we will see a lot of issues or a lot of problems, because there is always a conflict. Because a finance guy will always see an ROI, that if I invest in technology, what is the returns and what is my payback period? But that's why it's all the more important for any finance guy to actually look at the future of technology together. So that's where we are seeing a lot of traction around that. Then in terms of architecture, it's all flexible, because today's architecture is all open source, and any technology can talk to any other technology. In the 1980s, if you look at it, we built we had multiple systems. For example, a company had its own manufacturing systems. Similarly, another company had its own marketing systems, but it was so expensive that no two technology can talk to each other. So these integration projects were hugely expensive, and there are companies who have actually thrived on these integrations. But today, because everything is open source, and today we have ways and means where any technology can talk to any other technology. That's why we are talking about a fluid architecture where you need to better be agile. In fact, it's a differentiator, because as I was saying, that you need to collaborate and you need to compete as well, because there are certain things I cannot do well. There is somebody who will do it better than me, who will do it faster than me. So I need to collaborate, but I also still need to compete. I will give you an example of your course. If you look at your course, if you try to do everything on your own, can you do it? Because the time is not enough. So that's why what you do, you work in groups, you collaborate, but you still compete, right? Because you have a CGPA where you are evaluated. So that's a similar thing what we talk about in architecture, where you still need to compete, and it's all a flexible architecture, because I need to scale up and scale down, I need to fail fast. Now, the next thing I spoke briefly about it, digital twins. Now, again, this is a term which is actually has become very, and people are misusing it. It is nothing but I create a digital replica of my physical, because after COVID, what has happened is this what if scenario analysis, simulation is very important, because I remember still the days when there was a uh, some bird flu in some of these this part of the world, and then some companies had to actually relocate their factories. So because they had redundancy built in, they had done their what if analysis, they have done their scenario analysis, it was very easy. And today we have technology where you have IoT sensors, you have machine learning algorithms which can actually get into a autonomous decision making, because for certain things I don't need uh, I really don't need some algorithms, in a sense that the human beings to actually do the decision, because there are 24 hours in a day. But so the machines will do the autonomous decision making. But what we'll do is it will actually do our autonomous decision making. Now, in terms of my horizon, if I look at my future look, it's important that I look at technology together, because any decision, it has to be a foundation, it has to be a macro view. So these are some of the broad topics which you can look from a research point of view also, or at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is we are trying to solve a business problem. So that's very important for us. Now, let me just briefly look at it. Again, I will, in the interest of time, I will not go into too much detail. So again, we spoke about it, that there's a macro technology focus where just single technology is not enough. So now this is again in terms of, we spoke about digital experience, we spoke about analytics. Now risk again has become very important. We spoke about cyber risk, but again, there's also something called regulatory risk. And this is again where we see a lot of technology interventions around that. So that is again an area which is of prime importance. Core modernization, we spoke about it. Exponential intelligence, again, exponential is something which is going to be commercial in the next 60 months. And at the end of the day, quantum again has become a very important critical part when we talk about any of your business. Now, moving on, in terms of now, these are some of the companies. I will not be able to share too much of information because of what exactly they have done, but I can just briefly tell you, Johnson & Johnson, they have been able to reduce some of their drug development, because any drug discovery in a pharma industry actually takes a lot of money. And it's a, if you get a blockbuster drug, your future is made, but it takes a lot of money, it takes time. So that's where they have actually used technology in terms of IoT and clinical data to bring some of these medicines at a record pace. And FedEx is another example which has used IoT sensors. In fact, they are quite cheaper today to actually track. In fact, you get a feeling that it's a 24/7 network, This was always there. In fact, if I look at the likes of Amazon or US postal services, this was always very much there. But FedEx has taken it to a different direction altogether, where they have used IoT coupled with blockchain to a certain extent that now this any tracking and visibility is just a push of a button. Now, moving on in terms of ethical, again, this is based on a survey. It says that it is just not a fad talk. It's actually ethical technology is what helps. That is very critical for all of us. Now, what we are talking about is, it's in terms of every company stands for something, and all your values, your mission statement, your vision statement, it has actually needs to have a trust power. See, this is again a vision or a mission statement for any company is just not a fad statement. If you look at it, the founders, the owners, they've given a lot of thought to it, why it has to be like this. Second is again the data, as everybody knows about it right now, that data is very important, very critical for all of us. So it's very important that you have, because if you really don't have data, you cannot do anything. Because today's world, we have so much data we are generating, and it's very important to look at what is right data, what is wrong data. Because if you feed wrong data, the output is you will get is wrong, and that doesn't help anybody, right? So this strong data culture, strong data foundation, that becomes very important for us. Then in terms of defense, because as I was saying that your risks, your cyber risk, your ethical risk, your regulatory risk, this has become, because lawsuits and all that has become very, because you know what happened even in the US elections, because it was rigged and all that. So that becomes, it's very important that you get your defenses right. And this is no rocket science, this is all common sense, but I just wanted to re-emphasize some of these aspects. Next is, again, there's a lot of issues around privacy and because you cannot collect data without asking, because unethical collection of data, not respecting somebody's privacy and collecting consumer data without him or his knowing, is going to land you in a lot of stuff. So you have to be very categorical in terms of, if I say is the GDPR has become a very big thing in Europe now. So what kind of data you can collect, what data you need permission, you have to be very clear and transparent around that. And do respect the cultural norms. Again, this is a fundamental thing, but what typically happens is that, of course, technology has taken us to a different level altogether. But do understand that if we don't respect these cultural norms, no company can be successful. So as I was saying, this is basics, but this is again what I want to reemphasize, that companies are actually looking at an ethical technology to move to the future. Now, in terms of the typical questions we ask is, what is your stakeholder management becomes very important. Now, stakeholder, typically we thought it's the shareholders, it's the customers, the employees, but the one big thing which we missed is our community. This is we tend to ignore, and that's where I think we will see a lot of push and a lot of litigations around that. So never ignore your community, because that becomes very important. Now, in terms of, again, if you look at it, ethical technology and how do you measure? Now, measurement of all this becomes important, because if you cannot measure something, if you cannot quantify, I think this is not going to yield anything. So that's where I think disruptive technologies are helpful. They will definitely help you increase your transparency or harden your security, and definitely, but do understand that you need to measure it. You need to measure it objectively, and they have to be relevant. And see, personalization is fine. Everybody wants a personalized technology, but just personalizing something which is not relevant for you doesn't make sense. Because if I'm not interested in, say, buying a house, and if you try to give me a feed that this is a house which is important, I will not like it. So it's important to be more relevant. Again, this is all, maybe you will think that it's a talk, but these are some of the things which we tend to forget. And this is where I think in terms of technology management, this will be of paramount importance for all of us. Now, in terms of, I will just, again, as I said, I will not be able to share too much of information around that, but what Providence St. Joseph Health has done, they have used open source to connect with their partners, because any hospital, the way they work is they work with a lot of their suppliers and customers. And because it's a hospital which cannot spend a lot of money on technology, so that's where they have actually used open source in a big way. CIBC, again, this is a bank based in Canada where they have used blockchain very successfully, because if you look at it today, the banks are little robust. So that's where, if you look at fintech, become very, very important, where they offer something called a bank in a box. It's cloud based, it's faster. So that is where they have actually integrated with some of these fintech companies using a variety of technologies to actually give a better experience, banking experience. Abbott, again, in terms of pharma company, they have been able to actually use their clinical data and IoT to actually drive some of these technologies in terms of drug development. Google, again, in terms of ultimate, if you look at anything you want to look at where technology is, I think Google is the best way, because they are always ahead of time. In fact, I have friends in Google who know that they're part of the strategy team, and it's all a very closely guarded secret that they plan something 3 years, 4 years in advance, that what is going to come in. So all this search engine optimization, which you are seeing today, they were actually conceived 5-6 years ago. And of course, this gentleman, David Danks, was actually telling that, again, this is a quote. What he was saying is that at the end of the day, we all need data, because if you cannot measure, if you don't have data, you will, all your machines, all your AI, ML, it doesn't really make sense for any of. Now, in terms of, again, I will go a little faster in the interest of time. Again, I was just talking about the finance and the future of IT, where it's very, very important that in terms of budgeting and capital planning, it's important that you need to have a more flexible approach. Now, what we know to do is, it has to change with finance, has changed with IT, because today's companies are trying for a creative funding, because today you can say that we have a startup culture. It's like a venture capital investing, but at the end of the day, understand the venture capital will also look for his own money. So that's where it's very, very critical that you look at your change with finance, look at your creative funding. And everybody is moving from capex to opex. For example, the cloud model, it's nothing but you're moving your things from capex to opex, because it's all a pay as per use. So this is the trend, again, the way we are looking at it. And again, ROI, again, there are ways and means of how we measure ROI, but it's very, very important that we have a way and mean to measure some of these. And of course, at the end of the day, you have to look at what is the value you deliver. And risk mindset, again, it's there. Digital foundation is, again, what is going to be very, very critical for all of us. So again, in terms of readiness, you have to look at, is your organization ready for agility? So there are certain things. Are you investing with universities? Typically, what happens is any academics and industry, there's always it's disjointed, right? So that's where I think if industry takes these problems to academics, and if they work collaboratively, I think today's many of the problems will be solved. So this is where I think we will see a lot of, in fact, if you look at US, most of the universities were actually born because they wanted to create, an industry was created out of it. But unfortunately, in some parts of the world, this experiment has not worked. But we need to see more of collaboration between universities and industry, because if you want to make it a better world, that is what is going to be the future for us. Now, in terms of trends, again, as I said, there are certain companies, again, I cannot share too much information. So Delta Airlines, they have taken this to an ultimate customer experience, where they have all these algorithms, pricing algorithms, which will actually give them substantial benefits. Similarly, Rolls-Royce doesn't sell cars anymore. If you look at it, they actually sell service. It's always the data, the service. It's piece on computer, because selling cars is, again, not the differentiator. Selling a service is what it is. So I just wanted to emphasize on that. Now, in terms of digital twins, again, I was saying it's nothing but a replica of your physical world, where you collect data from your physical world, you move it to your digital world, and then you do your processing, and then feed it back to your physical world. Now, in terms of automobile and aircraft, they have taken it to the next level, because they are looking at optimizing their value chains. Similarly, the oil field service operators, they're capturing massive data, because looking at an oil field, discovering an oil field was very, very tedious in olden days. But now, because of this is very, very, it's super fast. Similarly, healthcare, if you look at it today, diagnosis, drug discovery, record fast. Similarly, smart cities. In fact, this is Singapore has already actually taken it to the next level. So the virtual model, how you will plan your urban, for example, I can control my home sitting somewhere. So this is again, it's actually reality. So that's where I think we will see a lot of things which are going to be the trend in the next 4 to 5 years. Again, in terms of your processes have to be right, because it's very easy to say that I will create a digital twin, but if your processes are broken, this is not going to work. So that's very, very important in terms of what we want to do. But, and everybody is today moving to a platform-based approach. So I will not get into too much details in the interest of time. I know this is the first lecture, so but I'll just give you certain ideas. So if you look at it again, pharma companies, San Diego, they have actually, in terms of smart cities, uh, and some of these universities, they have actually taken this to the next level. When I talk about a digital twin, everything they are able to manage sitting in a room. So this is again, as I said, because these are some of our clients, I cannot share too much information. So, but I just wanted to state that these are some of the successful companies and universities which have actually done it in reality. The digital twin is not a fad, it actually works. Now, in terms of human experience, I spoke about that it's something like an extension of a lie detector where you add your EQ to your technology IQ. So in terms of what the sample technology, what we have seen is your natural language generation or natural language processing, or your sentiment analysis. This has actually become very, very critical. And today, if I say that this has taken consumer behavior to the next level, so that is very, very critical and important. And in terms of what in your readiness, it's very, very important that you need to engage your stakeholders, because if your stakeholders are not engaged, all these neuroscientific methods, they don't work, because if somebody is not willing to share data, if it doesn't improve the life of a customer, this doesn't make sense, because there's always a cost to it, there's always an ROI to it. So that's where I think you need to be very, very in fact, if I look at it, the facial coding, it looks that I don't need to enter my password, it will just recognize my face, and it should be able to log in. So these are, I think we will see more of these human experience coming, and this is an area of you can look at from a research point of view, but this is a very, very interesting and path breaking which is going to happen in the next few years. Now, in terms of trend, again, these are some of the companies which have actually taken human experience to UBS. In fact, very, very one of our very, very preferred clients who has actually done it. Again, I will not be able to share too much information. I can only share the names with you because of confidentiality reasons. Similarly, in terms of the architecture awareness, I spoke about that we need to move into from silos. It's all a flexible architecture. So moving very quickly, it's important that it's actually an enterprise. Look at it from not just one technology. You should not actually look at whether it's at the end of the day, we are solving a business problem. So that's where it's important that you look at whether it's strategically important, whether it's all DevOps, right? For example, I develop and test together and I fail fast. So because everybody is getting into a design thinking kind of a thing, an agile kind of methodology. So this is where I think the architecture is going to be more flexible, be it open source, be it more scalable. So this is again, a lot of research has been done around that, but this again gives you a lot of food for actually thought and further research. Then in terms of what are the things you need to look at it, that if you have a senior architect, what role does he play? Does he or she just confine himself to one technology? Because today technology changes and we have to learn really fast. Forget fast, learn fast, unlearn, learn. This is not a fad again, because technology is changing very, very fast. So that's why it's very, very important that a lot of companies have failed in this transition. And this is a very, very interesting area of research which some of you can look at, because I think a lot of things will actually are going to happen in this area. Now, in terms of trend in action, again, National Australia Bank, they have actually had a very, very flexible architecture where they have moved. And AWS is a classic example. In fact, we consult for them. So how their architecture, how they can scale up, because it's all about scales and it's all about fast. That's where, because it's pay per use. If I have only a limited number of customers, I may not be really viable. So that's where I think scale and faster to market becomes very, very important when it comes to some of these trends. Next, I look at in terms of horizon. Next, what are the technologies which are going to be critical? So again, I'm not saying it's a prophecy, but do understand you have to watch out for things, because things are changing so fast and you will always get these weak signals from the market. So a lot of people come to me and say that, no, should I become an astrologer? No, the moment you look at what is happening around you, the moment you keep your eyes and ears open, you will always get these weak signals. It's very, very important to understand that some of these weak signals, this becomes very, very important. Now, in terms of, if I look at it again, this is a very busy slide, but what I'm going to say is what is going to be for the next less than 2 years is, for example, cognitive insight, low code or no code development, similarly robotic process, are mixed reality. These will be for the next 2 years. Between next 2 to 5 years, what we will see is, we will look at quantum in a big way. We will look at quantum cryptography. So again, this is based on what we spoke to our customers and our research with some of the universities in US, which you can see that augmented reality cloud is actually going to be the emerging in 2 to 5 years. And in terms of the future, if you look at it, it's the augmented cognition or the smart. I will not get into too much details, but this will give you enough food for your future research, because we did a survey with our customers. We spoke to some of the universities. We spoke at some of the development community. And based on that, what we felt is, these are some of the technologies which are going to be very, very critical in the next less than 2 years. This is what are emerging is between 2 to 5 years. Similarly, if I say futuristic, so whenever you, since you are masters and your PhD students, I think this is where you can take a more futuristic approach, and maybe but my advice will be, maybe you take something which is within the 2 to 5 years, because if I take a too futuristic data, you may not have enough data for your research. So just be aware of the fact that what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, because data collection in your thesis will be of very, very, because as I was saying, if you cannot collect data, if you cannot really look at data, this is not going to help. So in terms of trend, again, I will not be able to share. So I will just stop here. I know I just rushed and maybe I gave too much information in little time, but I thought that maybe let's take some questions so that at least we can spend some more time on the questions rather than I speaking, because this virtual thing has its own pitfalls, because typically it becomes a monologue, and of course everybody is actually on video. That's a good thing, but I just cannot force everybody to be on video. But I always, because it's a high touch with high tech, what actually helps. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer some of these.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. That was a very inspiring talk, very interesting. I believe everyone is actually taking away a couple of important points that you mentioned earlier. There are a lot of questions in the chat, indicating that there are a lot of interest as well.
Yeah.
But I think we don't have enough time to answer all of them. I will pick randomly few of them, and I would like to invite some who have already written question in the chat to directly ask question to you. May I start with Bu Henny? I think you are writing the question in the chat. Would you like to directly say what you are asking for? So what is your question, Bu Henny?
Okay, thank you, Pak Nyoman. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sandeep. A nice presentation.
Thank you.
I have some question to you. First, when we want to transfer the traditional data manually record to the IoT, how to assure that the data integrity? And the second one, can you explain how to initiate the migration from manual record to the IoT data record? Okay, I think that's my question. My pleasure. If you can answer, my pleasure.
I think it's a great question. I think the data integrity is everybody is talking about. So what I will say is, again, go with somebody whom is a trusted partner. For example, again, private cloud may be very, very expensive because not everybody will get into that. But today we have public cloud, which are in fact very secured, and there are agencies which will actually ratify or certify that this is safe. So that's very, very important that you go with a partner who is trusted. So that way we can improve our data integrity. Because if I say, let's say Oracle Cloud or an Amazon Cloud, because these brands themselves actually will say that, yes, I can trust them. So that's very, very important. But again, as I was saying, that there is no right or wrong answer, because if somebody wants to really misuse data, he or she can always do it. So we cannot really stop it completely, but I will advise you always go with a trusted partner, because that way I think you will still be able to preserve your data integrity. And to your second part of your question, in terms of migration from one system to another, I think if you have less of human intervention, I think that's better, because some of these algorithms, but again, somebody who's writing the algorithm, you have to check whether it actually doesn't manipulate certain things. But if you leave it to machines, machines do a better job in terms of my routine, or when it comes to processing lots of things in a record time, which is routine. So I think that way, I think if we have leverage AI and ML for migration, this is because today I know companies which have tools which will actually do this seamless migration from an on-premise to a cloud. And it's all tested, and it's all driven by AI ML, because the more you give this human interaction, there are chances of manipulation. I don't say machines may not be there, because it's at the end of the day, it's a human being who is writing the code. But if there is some check around that, I'm sure this can be very, very seamless.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you,
Does that
Mr.
answer
Sandeep.
your question, Bu Henny?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe one question, Pak. So, Mr. Sandeep, for my first question, you mean like validation, something like validation data?
Yes.
Can we perform the validation by our own, or we must to follow the third party validation?
You can do on your own, provided you have the capability, and thing is, it has to be trusted, right? So somebody should trust you.
Okay.
So that's important. Because what happens is, you have done a validation, but tomorrow some auditor comes in and says that,
yes,
how can you so be sure that this validation is correct?
Okay.
So that is where it's always better to get not an expensive solution, but it's always better to get the views of a third party, which helps.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Henny. I would like to also invite Pak Erwin Tambubolon. You have written a question. Would you like to ask directly?
Yeah, thank you, Pak Nyoman. Hi, Sandeep. It was nice to hear your presentation, and I pick up one of your slides on the earlier. Basically, you mentioned about the trending for the trends that refer to the 11 years of research. And we can see that all the things keep moving, especially the technology.
Right.
But I think, well, we know that many companies have their own value, integrity, innovation, blah, blah. Technology keep moving. However, I think the value of the company is still the same. The question is, how does it relate? Do you think, is there any relation between the company value to the technology, or there is no relation at all? And my second question is, with the technology changing so fast, how do we anticipate the good corporate governance?
Okay. I
Thank
think
you.
great question. Great question. So first one, if I understand that in terms of failure, now what happens is the failures are there because tomorrow, if it's a new technology coming in, people try to jump into the bandwagon and say that this technology will work for me. See, the thing is, you have to, at the end of the day, we are trying to solve a business problem. If that technology is not relevant, why should I even embrace it? Just because my competitor is doing it, why should I even do it? So that's why this failure is because people try to jump into whatever comes in. Because I know companies who really don't need a blockchain, but they are getting into a blockchain because that is not going to help them. So this is the reason why there's a failure and people start blaming on the technology. See, technology itself is not to be blamed because technology is trying to solve your business problem. If the applicability or relevance is not there, that's where we are seeing it. Second thing, what we have seen is people try the big bang approach. They try to do everything together. That's a recipe for a big failure because even in digital transformation, people say, I want to digitally transform my enterprise at one go. It never happens. You have to look at part by part. Of course, you need to have a scalable architecture, but maybe the customer facing application, which will give you more value. You can attack that first. And once you get the management, the low hanging fruits, which I call it, once you get the management buy-in, I think those are the areas which you need. You need to look at a piece by because I strongly advocate a pilot-based approach rather than a big bang. Because if I do a pilot-based approach, it's an agile approach. I can fail and I can learn fast. But big bang, the stakes are very high, and any failure, people start blaming the technology. Technology is not to be the blame. It's only the relevance, the way application, which actually is to be blamed. So that's very, very important. And sorry, a second question, I just missed your.
About governance, I think.
Okay. Now, governance has become of very, very paramount importance because the quality of data becomes very, very critical. So, as I was saying that there are always smarter people. So, if we have less of human intervention when it comes to data governance, I think we will get a better quality because if I have a rule written and nobody can tamper with that rule, I think we will still have better data governance because the moment you start working with spreadsheets, the moment you start sharing data over emails, I think that is where, so all this translation, you should not allow where there is a scope for tampering. So if you really do that well, I know it's easier said than done, but we should try to minimize Excel when it comes to sharing data because that is where I think most tampering happens. So I think that way, I think blockchain may be expensive, but I think there are a lot of technology which are available today which will actually help you do that. That's important.
Okay. Yeah, that's very nice discussion. Right. Let's move to a slightly more technical issue here. Bu Aprina, are you here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Pak.
please silakan.
Hi, Sandeep.
Mhm.
Actually, I also working as a Oracle consultant. So that's why I'm asking, like, actually, how long is the standard, the implementation to be success or accepted during the transition?
Sorry, during the transition?
I mean, like, we have the transition process after the go live, right, usually.
Right.
Yeah. So usually, how long will be the standard time so that the company can work efficiently or all are accepting the new implementation? Thank you.
I think it's a great question. So only thing is this change management or acceptance, it has to start from the beginning. You should not wait till go live because unless the people using the system are comfortable with that, if you give them something on the day of go live, there is always a resistance. So I think you should involve all the stakeholders from the beginning. But typically what we have seen is this transition, you should at least minimum do 1 month end closure because you have to close your books in 1 month. So 1 month is what is a bare minimum. But what we have seen is it's 3 months where actually you need that. But there are smaller companies which have done it 1 month, but 1 month is the bare minimum what I have seen because you need to close 1 financial month books to give the confidence. to the company using.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Right. I would like to invite Pak Dian Ramawan. Dian.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the opportunity. Sandeep,
Yeah.
very interesting, very fresh to the topics. I have some concern on that.
Mm-hmm.
So we all agree that one constant throughout this turbulent era is the need to learn, the need to adapt, the need to change. The COVID-19 pandemic has already triggered the acceleration of the digital adoption globally.
Mm-hmm.
Also, COVID-19 also adjusted, our approach to change management, our approach to accelerate the process automation. Some acknowledge a shift to more cloud-based business activities. Unlikely, Indonesia is not following the trend globally, just started in the very few activities. And we also identify the competitiveness and workforce resilience as the benefit we want most from the digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Also, transformation is accelerating among the majority organization. We are starting now. And then the top benefit is reducing costs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But in my opinion, however, overall, we can say the human element is the key to success. And my question, do you see the tendency in the future that there will be wider discrepancy or discrimination between developing countries and underdeveloped countries? Thank you.
Okay. I think again a great question. I think what digital was supposed to reduce the barriers, but what has happened is the pandemic has exposed us very badly, where the difference between the two worlds has increased. But do understand that maybe this part of the world we do not see, but understand that the action is actually happening here, because US and UK are very matured economies. And if you look at whatever development, whatever new things which are happening, these are happening in this part of the world. And I think that way countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, India will play a very, very big role. So what you are seeing is maybe temporary, where you don't see much of a, because I remember, because 3 years ago I was stationed in Bangladesh, and there somebody said that we have very primitive technology. Do we ever get to work? And next year, what happened is Oracle was there, Amazon was there. So within a span of 1 year, that guy was so happy that he got to work with some of the latest technologies within a span of 1 year. So what you are seeing right now is just maybe an aberration. But as I said, this part of the world is now where the action is. US and UK are matured markets. The action is going to happen here. So I see a lot of promise. In fact, as I speak, because the salaries in India have increased so much, people are trying to move to some of the other countries, because I don't know, it's a market which is not driven by market conditions, but it's all very, say, manipulated. But the way we are seeing is a lot of these things are moving to some of these Southeast Asia countries. And in the coming years, I think that is where the action will.
So you mean that the other countries, the minority countries, can be promising?
Yes, yes, because you offer something which nobody else offers, right?
So the superpower countries or the developed countries still keep prolong the dominancy of their.
No, they will not dominate. I will give an example. Again, I hope don't take it otherwise. But if you look at it, in the 1960s, most of the Nobel laureates were from US, right? They had the most cutting edge research. Then what happened is there was a generation that it became a prosperous country. And unfortunately, the current generation, they did not focus so much on maths and science. So that's why if you look at it, they don't produce so many Nobel laureates these days. But it's the developing countries or the Southeast Asia countries or this part of the world where people we are masters in actually making the most out of limited resources. So that's where I think, because you have scarcity, you have a problem. We will see a dominance of these countries, and because UK and US, as I said, they are matured markets. There's not much development which is going to happen. Again, this is a personal view, but I am very, very optimistic that this part of the world, we will see a lot of development in the coming 5 to 6.
Okay, thank you, Sandeep.
Sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we are optimistic. We will see a lot of opportunities ahead in the future, right?
Right.
Okay. I would like to invite Alex Iskandar. Alex, you may ask question directly. Hello. Okay.
Sorry, Pak.
Okay.
Pak Nyoman.
Ya, silakan.
Yes, Pak. Thank you very much, Pak Nyoman, for the time that I can directly ask my question to Mr. Chatterjee. One of the key questions that I'm going to ask you about the, you are sharing the good story about the companies that have good listening.
Yeah, it's not very clear, Pak Alex. Can you set up to make it a little bit louder? Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Pak. Can I speak louder?
Yeah, I think
louder?
it's better now.
Better,
Yeah.
better.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Good evening, all. Thank you very much for the time. And I would like to ask Mr. Sandeep about the trend now. Is everybody in the company want to have to change the company with the IoT, etc., and with the good story that you have telling about. And somehow in the company we do have some of the obstacles, and also because we are implementing something that probably, is there any tools that probably one thing that we can see that it will not be successful to implement it to our company, for example, and then we have to stop it and we have to change anyway. That's one of the key questions that I'm going to ask about you, because not every company had the same culture, the same environment that, and also what is the good tools that we have to, or maybe tools like something like that, or checklist to have some kind of the action to stop the action, the change that we have done up to now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So I think that's a great question. Typically what happens is, if there's no push from the top, because if the top management doesn't have a buy-in, if the top management doesn't get involved in the project, it's very difficult to get it successful. So if the organization culture is not there, first of all, we will have to define that culture. For example, if company should be willing to take risks. I remember when I was working with Tata Motors, I built a machine and that had to be scrapped and no questions were asked. That company had a tolerance for risk and they knew that these guys are promising. So I don't say that you should say pardon everybody for a very big mistake, but what I'm trying to say is that the company has a tolerance for some of these mistakes. I think the culture itself is born to do something, because if the company is too controlled and they try to control every penny, then these kind of things may not work. And as I said, that just because there's a technology, it need not be relevant or successful for my, because I know a company which we were trying to sell a software for financial consolidation. There were a group of 13 companies. They said, we don't need it. We are okay with Excel. So that's fine. Even Excel, but only thing with the Excel, the integrity of the data is lost. But just because there is a technology available, don't just use it. And what my experience has been, some of the startups, they have brilliant solutions, very cheap, low code, open source, and they really work. So, and I know customers who have come back to us and said that, why don't you suggest this solution which is with this startup? Because that way your total cost of ownership is low and you get a good solution. So I think you should explore these startups, and because they have brilliant solutions and low cost and works. So that is where I think it's important. And culture, again, I don't have a magical answer for that. Somebody has to go and educate people that if you don't do this, you will perish. So, and if a company doesn't have the tolerance for risk taking, customer doesn't have the tolerance for trying it out, I think nobody can do anything about it. It's all human beings, because the company is made of human beings, right? If we cannot put that culture in place, nobody in the world can do anything.
Okay, that was nice discussion. And then next, I would like to invite Bu Beauty Soekarno.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Nyoman. Yeah, is it like I'm interested with your discussion for this night, but I want to ask you something about your opinion. Is it possible to apply it on a small economic sector like SME, small medium economics? Because I see that Indonesia in this era, in this pandemic era, Indonesia has many SME, and in this in this era, it's all the home industry started to go online. What's your opinion about it? Is it possible to apply it?
See, the thing is, online is going to stay, but only thing is, as this pandemic goes away, at the end of the day, we are all social creatures, right? Human beings are social creatures, so we cannot stay at home for long. So we will definitely go out to shop. But only thing is, online and offline both have to offer the same experience. So whichever company is able to crack it, they will be successful. Second thing, I know there are some bigger companies which can afford some of these technology, but today I was saying that there are some logistic startups which have made these things affordable for even small and medium businesses. So that's why I think, of course, technology cost still has to come down further, because I know in India, even a lot of small companies cannot afford it. But we are seeing a lot of things that startups give you some very, very good cost-effective solution. So this is going to happen. Online is, yes, it's going to stay, but whoever can crack online and offline, same experience, they will be the winners.
Yeah, but can I give your opinion?
Yeah.
Before that, you said that human brain is the most important to make a decision, right?
Right.
But the technologies in this start, I think that start 2010, maybe 2010, all the technologies start to change everything like human being. Until that we see like Japan, for example, all the workers start to change to robot, using robot like that. Is it possible to like for small medium economic for human being workers?
Sorry, I missed the last part. You went on mute. I just missed your last part.
Oh,
is it possible?
Yeah, is it possible like with the last my last statement, human being is the most important to make a decision, but as we know now that I think that every companies maybe start to change their human being workers to change their position with technologies.
Human is replaced by machine.
Yeah, I mean that replaced by machine.
Do you think that human is still the most important, playing most important roles, while machine are already taking
at the end
over?
Of the day, it's a human being who will write the algorithm for these machines, right? So you definitely need these kind of people.
Right.
Second thing, it's country by country. For example, in China, if I look at it, it is cheaper to operate a robot than pay a salary to a human being. So that's why they got robot. But in a country like India, where there's excess surplus of labor, this will not work. So it's always depends on country to country, because just because one technology works somewhere doesn't mean that it will. Similarly, I will just give an example of Walmart. Walmart, they have these quality inspection, and in US they do it by drones, because their human labor is expensive. But in India, it's a human being which does the inspection, because here the cost of a machine will definitely more than that of a human being. So it's always driven by economics. And as I said, there may be certain replacement, but only for routine jobs. Whenever it comes to cases where you don't have a history, whether it comes to make a decision, a machine cannot make a decision, because as I was saying that when to crash land, no machine can do it. So there are certain sophisticated things which a human brain will still, and at the end of the day, a human brain, he has to write the code for the machine. So a machine cannot write a code for a machine.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's interesting. Thank you, Sandeep.
Yeah. And then Bu Rina, maybe this would be the last question that we have time to discuss. Bu Rina, you were asking about cryptocurrency. Hello, Bu Rina? Okay, there was one question about the cryptocurrency. What is your opinion about the future of cryptocurrency? That was the question.
Cryptocurrency, again, what is happening is it's only a controlled set of people who are trying to make money out of it. So that's why I think there's less of acceptance, and that's why now what has happened is in India, what has happened is cryptocurrency, there were people who traded there, but now the Reserve Bank of India, they want to try their own digital currency. It's all the government which is competing with some of these private players. So as I said, there's no universal standard, because cryptocurrency is based on the blockchain technology, right? So because there are no universal standards, unless there is no uniform or standard, we will not be able to see much traction. Because if we don't get into a platform kind of approach, for example, Android or iOS, what they have done. Similarly, if cryptocurrency had a universal standard, it would have been very, very successful. But because there are so many different agencies which run their own cryptocurrencies, that is why I don't see much of a traction there. And there are limited people who are trying to make some bucks out of it. So it's not promising right now.
All right. Yeah, that is interesting, because there are a lot of people discussing about blockchain, cryptocurrency.
Right.
And probably to some extent, I agree with what you are saying, that it is not really promising right now.
Yes.
There are a lot of challenges for cryptocurrency to work effectively. Yeah. That's interesting. So not all technology that we heard about currently is actually working very well in business, in real life. Right. Some are working very well, but some will not really. I think it is more about a lot of talk, a lot of discussion about it, but it is not really not yet making a big impact in the real business and real life. Yeah, I think that was a very nice discussion, and I appreciate also all the students who are writing questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to discuss all of those, but that is also a reflection that you pick a lot of issues from the talk that we listened this evening. So thank you very much, Sandeep, once again.
Thank you so much.
Very, very fortunate to have you this evening as an opening lecture for the new student as well as the old student. So we are going to start our semester next Monday. So hopefully this will give everyone a good takeaways for everyone's future. So thanks you very much once again.